The forest was always quiet in the morning. The trees didn't move, the wind didn't speak, the river didn't sing. Only the soft sound of butterfly wings brushing against leaves could be heard. It was as if time had decided to pause, just to listen to her heart. Elara sat at the edge of a moss-covered rock, wearing a soft white dress that shimmered like morning dew. Her long, wavy brown hair flowed gently over her shoulders, and a crown of wildflowers rested gently on her head. She looked like a dream, but she was real. A fairy, gentle, lonely, and full of silence. She wasn't born like other children. She didn't have a mother who held her or a father who told her bedtime stories. One morning, many years ago, the forest simply found her, wrapped in a cocoon of light, sleeping in the curve of an old oak tree. The butterflies were the first to notice. The wind was the first to whisper her name. And the trees were the first to love her. Elara, the forest would hum when the leaves rustled. Elara, the birds would sing when the sun rose. She had wings, soft, light wings like a dragonfly, only bigger and translucent. But she didn't fly often. She liked to sit on the forest floor and watch things quietly. The way the dew sat on spiderwebs, the way caterpillars turned into butterflies, and how the sun gently pushed through the tall trees. Though she never said much, she spoke in another way, with her eyes. They were large and gentle, filled with questions and wonder. Her hands were always soft, holding things with care, like each touch was a promise. That morning, she was holding a butterfly in her palms, one with wings that were not bright but dull, as if it had forgotten how to shine. "I'll help you remember," she whispered, not with words, but with feelings. She closed her eyes and leaned her forehead to her hands. Slowly, a golden glow appeared between her fingers. It was soft and warm. When she opened her hands again, the butterfly's wings had changed. They shimmered in purple and gold, catching the light like fire dancing on water. She smiled gently. Near her, a small white cage sat on the ground. It wasn't made of iron or silver, but of vines and petals. Inside were a few paper butterflies, ones she made from leaves and flower petals for the lonely ones that forgot how to fly. She never locked the door of the cage. She only opened it when a creature was ready to return to the sky. But that day felt different. The forest didn't hum, the birds didn't sing, and Elara's heart felt heavy. She stood up slowly, brushing leaves from her dress, and looked around. Her wings quivered slightly, sensing something strange. The light above was dimmer than usual. The trees, usually warm and golden with life, now looked sleepy and tired. A single leaf dropped from a nearby tree. She caught it in her hands. It was brown, dry. That wasn't normal. Not here, not in the heart of the forest where magic still lived. She walked barefoot over the soft earth, passing flowers that had once smiled up at her. They were closing now, their petals wilting. Elara touched them softly, trying to give them warmth, but her hands glowed less than usual. Something was wrong. She returned to her favorite tree. A very old tree with a hollow space in its trunk. Inside, she kept her little treasures, glowing feathers, fallen stars, and notes written in wind language. She reached in and pulled out a small glass vial. It held golden dust, her forest magic. She sprinkled it over a drooping flower. Nothing happened. Elara gasped softly. Her magic wasn't working. Suddenly, the wind picked up. It blew fast and strong, tugging at her hair and wings. Leaves spun into the air, and a strange sound filled the forest. A deep hum, like a heart trying to speak after a long silence. "Elara," the wind whispered. Her name. It wasn't a song this time. It was a warning. She turned quickly and saw it. Far beyond the trees, where the forest ended and the forgotten lands began, a gray mist was crawling in like a shadow. Slow, thick, and cold. The mist touched the leaves, and they turned brown. It moved over flowers, and they withered. Even the butterflies flew away from it, confused and scared. Elara stepped back, clutching her hands to her chest. Her heart beat faster. She had never gone beyond the forest's edge. She didn't know what waited out there. But she knew one thing. This mist did not belong here. She rushed back to the place where the butterfly cage sat. The paper butterflies inside were shaking. She knelt beside them and whispered, "Don't be afraid." From beneath her dress, she pulled out a tiny scroll tied with a golden ribbon. It was a map, not drawn with ink, but with lines made of flower veins and dotted with glowing dust. It showed her forest, the great tree, the moonlake, and beyond that, the forgotten path. The path no one had taken for many years. She knew what she had to do. If her magic was fading, if the forest was dying, and if the mist was growing, then she needed answers. And maybe, just maybe, the answers lay beyond the trees. She stood up, her wings opening gently behind her, like petals of a quiet flower waking up. She took the butterfly cage with her, though she let the butterfly she healed fly free. It circled her once, as if thanking her, then flew straight into the light. Elara smiled softly. "I'll come back," she promised the trees, the flowers, the butterflies. "I'll bring the light again." With one last look at the forest she called home, she stepped toward the forgotten path. The trees behind her whispered farewells as Elara stepped onto the path no one had taken in a very long time. Her soft shoes touched the cracked stone of the forgotten path, half covered in moss and memories. The light here was different, dimmer, as if the sun was holding its breath. Elara held the small butterfly cage close to her chest. Though the butterflies inside were made of paper and petals, she believed they had hearts. She didn't want them to feel alone. She spoke to them softly. "Don't worry, we're just going for a walk," she whispered. But it wasn't just a walk. It was a journey, a search, a calling. The path curved like a river. On each side were trees that didn't belong to her forest. These trees were tall and thin, with silver bark and no leaves. They looked like they had forgotten how to live. Elara touched one of them. Cold, silent, empty. She moved forward carefully. The wind was still, and there were no butterflies here, only the sound of her own breath. She missed the songs of birds, the rustle of life, the warm greetings of the forest creatures. But she kept walking. After some time, she found something strange lying across the path, a ribbon. A red ribbon, faded with age. She bent down and picked it up. It had tiny golden threads, like something a child would wear. A memory clung to it. She held it to her chest and closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw a girl, not much older than her, running. The girl laughed as she chased someone, a boy, perhaps. The forest was alive then. The path wasn't forgotten. It was bright and full of life. Then, the memory faded. Elara opened her eyes, holding the ribbon tighter. "Who were you?" she whispered to the wind. She tied the ribbon gently to the butterfly cage and continued walking. As the day slowly passed, clouds thickened in the sky. The wind picked up, and then she felt it again, the mist. Crawling, reaching, like a shadow with fingers. Elara turned sharply. It was behind her. The gray mist had followed. It didn't move fast, but it was coming. And everything it touched lost its color, its warmth, its light. Even the stones beneath it cracked and crumbled. She ran, not wildly, but with purpose. Her wings fluttered behind her, not enough to fly, but enough to give her speed. The trees began to thin. The path opened into a small clearing. In the middle stood a broken statue of a woman with wings. Elara stopped and stared. The woman looked familiar. Her face was peaceful, her eyes closed. Her hands were outstretched, like she was offering something to the sky. Vines had grown over her shoulders. Cracks ran down her cheeks like tears. Elara approached slowly. Carved into the stone beneath the statue were words, faded and cracked. "To those who carry the light, never let the silence win." Elara touched the stone, and a warmth spread through her fingers. The statue glowed faintly, and then, something happened. From behind the statue, a small creature emerged. It was not a butterfly, not a bird, not even something from her forest. It was a lantern moth. But not just any moth. This one glowed with soft yellow light, and its wings were marked with ancient runes. It fluttered near her face, then hovered in front of her like it wanted her to follow. Elara nodded. "I'll follow." The moth led her down a narrow trail, deeper into the unknown. The trees here leaned in as if trying to whisper secrets. The air smelled of old stories and dust. The mist was no longer behind her, but she knew it would come again. Suddenly, they came upon an archway made of twisted roots. Beneath it was a wooden door, half open, creaking softly. Elara stepped through. Inside was a hidden room in the forest, round like a nest. Shelves of forgotten books. Bottles filled with glowing dust. In the center, a table made of stone. On it sat a journal. Elara approached and opened it gently. The first page was blank. The second had only one sentence, written in gold. You are not the first with wings to walk alone. Elara's eyes filled with tears. Who had written this? Who had walked this path before her? Why did their words feel like a warm hand on her heart? She turned more pages. Each one had a short message. Light can sleep, but it never dies. Silence comes to steal your voice, not your soul. When the last butterfly forgets how to fly, find the girl with the golden feather. Elara's heart stopped. A golden feather. She had one. It had fallen into her lap one night while she sat near Moon Lake. She had kept it wrapped in cloth, not knowing why it felt important. Now, she understood. It was a key. A clue. A piece of the puzzle. She reached into her pouch and pulled out the feather. It glowed brighter than before. The lantern moth circled it once, then flew toward the far wall, stopping in front of a mirror covered in dust. Elara walked over and wiped the mirror clean. In the reflection, she didn't just see herself. She saw another girl, wearing the same crown of flowers, holding the same feather, but she was crying. Behind her, the mist was everywhere. And then, the girl looked at her, right into Elara's eyes, and whispered, though Elara couldn't hear the voice, "You must remember." The mirror went dark. Elara stepped back, shaken. Who was that girl? Was she from the past? The future? Another world? Her twin? The lantern moth rested on her shoulder. Elara closed her eyes. She knew what she had to do. The forest wasn't just sick, it was losing its memory. Forgetting who it was. Forgetting the stories, the songs, the magic. The mist was not just a thing, it was forgetting itself. And the only way to stop it was to remember. To remember everything. She opened the butterfly cage. The paper butterflies fluttered softly, glowing now with a faint pink light. She touched them one by one and whispered stories into them. Memories of the forest, the songs of birds, the warmth of trees, the sound of the river laughing. She would carry those stories with her. She would bring them to wherever the mist had spread. Elara looked back at the journal, took it gently, and placed it in her satchel beside the golden feather. Then she looked ahead. Beyond the door, the sky was growing darker. Storms were coming, but she wasn't afraid. She had light, she had wings, and now, she had purpose. The air grew heavy as Elara stepped back onto the forest path. She had never seen the sky this dark in the middle of the day. A deep gray hue spread across the clouds, as though the sun itself had been hidden behind a veil of sorrow. The lantern moth still hovered beside her, casting a warm glow to light her way. In her satchel, the journal and golden feather rested close to her heart. She followed the moth's slow, circling flight through narrow, unfamiliar trails, beyond whispering trees and silent stones. Her steps were careful, her senses alert. The butterflies in the cage stayed calm now, as if they too felt something approaching, something forgotten. After hours of walking, Elara came to the edge of a strange clearing. Her feet stopped. Before her, nestled beneath a blanket of heavy fog, was a village. Tiny houses made of wood and stone, their roofs covered in vines, leaned toward each other like old friends whispering secrets. But no lights shone from the windows. No smoke curled from the chimneys. No laughter or voices could be heard. Only a still, lifeless hush. Elara clutched the butterfly cage tighter and stepped forward. The path into the village was made of cracked cobblestones. The well in the center stood dry and empty. A swing creaked gently in the wind, its chains rusted, its seat broken. She looked around. Doors were shut, curtains drawn, yet she knew someone was watching. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement. A child, small, thin, standing behind the glass of a window, staring at her with wide, frightened eyes. Elara turned fully to face the house. The child didn't move. She stepped closer and gently knocked on the wooden door. Silence. Then, a whisper, not from the child, but from behind her. "Go away," said a weak voice. "There's nothing left here." Elara turned to see an old woman sitting on a low bench near a crooked tree. Her eyes were pale, almost white, and her skin like paper. "Why are you here?" the woman asked. Elara hesitated. She wasn't used to speaking with others, at least, not with words. But she tried. "My name is Elara," she said softly. "I came to find what was lost." The woman squinted. "Lost? Everything is lost here, child. Even time." Elara approached her slowly, kneeling beside her. "What happened to this place?" she asked. The woman sighed. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "We forgot how to sing." Elara blinked. "Sing?" The woman nodded. "This village was once full of music. Children played, old ones told stories, and songs danced through the air like birds. But then, the mist came." She looked up at the dark sky. "At first, it was only the color that faded. Flowers lost their brightness. Birds stopped returning. Then the words disappeared. People began to forget. First names, then faces, then feelings." She looked down again, her eyes filling with something close to fear. "Now, we are just shadows." Elara listened carefully. Her heart ached. "Who was the child in the window?" she asked gently. The woman's lips trembled. "My granddaughter, Mira. She hasn't spoken in over a year." She just stopped, as if her voice was taken. Elara looked back toward the window. The child was gone. "I think I can help her," Elara whispered. The old woman looked surprised. "You?" Elara stood up and opened her satchel. She pulled out the golden feather and held it in the light. The glow grew stronger. The woman gasped softly. "You're one of them," she whispered. Elara tilted her head. "One of?" The woman nodded slowly. "The light bearers. Fairies of the old world. They came when things were darkest. They healed with songs and memory. But I thought you were only stories." Elara smiled gently. "Some stories are true." She walked toward the house. This time, the door opened before she knocked. A man stood there, tired and hollow-eyed. He looked down at her with confusion. "She won't speak," he said quietly. "I know," Elara answered. "But maybe she'll listen." He stepped aside. Elara entered the small home. It smelled like dust and wood smoke. The walls were covered with pictures, but many had faded until only outlines remained. In the corner, sitting on a woven mat, was Mira. She was small, with long black hair and eyes too old for her age. She didn't look up. Elara knelt beside her. She didn't speak. Instead, she opened the butterfly cage and let one of the paper butterflies fly out. It hovered softly over Mira's head, glowing gently. The girl blinked. Then Elara opened her hand and let the golden feather float between them. Mira reached for it. When her fingers touched it, a light pulsed gently from her chest. Elara placed her hand there, softly, over the girl's heart. In her mind, she whispered stories, not with words, but with warmth. She shared the sound of her forest, the laughter of rivers, the song of the wind in the trees. She shared the moment when the butterfly forgot how to shine, and then remembered. She gave Mira the feeling of being safe, of being seen. Mira gasped. A tear slid down her cheek. Then, her lips moved. One word. Elara. The old woman outside felt it. The mist near the village edge trembled. Inside, the girl looked into Elara's eyes. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was like a song just beginning. Elara smiled. The man stepped back, covering his mouth in disbelief. His daughter had spoken. The light returned to his eyes. The golden feather rose into the air and gently placed itself in Mira's hair like a crown. Elara stood. "You must remember the songs," she told them. "How?" the man asked. "Begin with her voice," she said softly. "Let it grow." As she walked out of the house, more doors opened. People came outside. Their eyes widened. Their hearts stirred. A girl with wings had come to remind them. The old woman cried. The lantern moth circled above. The paper butterflies returned to the cage, glowing brighter than ever. The mist began to pull back from the village edge. Elara walked toward the next part of the path, not looking back. She didn't have to. She had planted a memory. And the song would rise. The road after the village felt heavier, like each step tugged at something deeper in Elara's heart. Though she had helped Mira find her voice, a strange ache remained in the air. The mist still lingered, not close, but always watching. It wasn't gone, just waiting. The lantern moth stayed with her, glowing dimly now, almost tired. The butterflies in her paper cage remained still, their soft wings pulsing in rhythm with her breath. She looked at the sky. Still gray, still silent, but the wind began to change direction, brushing her cheeks like a whispering memory. It told her to go higher. Toward the mountains. Toward the place where clouds touched stone. She walked for hours. The forest thinned. The trees grew shorter. The air colder. Rocks and roots took the place of grass and flowers. Every now and then, she saw strange carvings in the trees, circles, symbols, names half erased. At one point, she knelt beside a stone with a cracked name etched into it. She placed her fingers on the letters and closed her eyes. She felt something, not fear, a deep sorrow. This was a place of forgetting. And she was walking straight into its heart. By evening, she reached the foot of the mountain. There, rising high above her, was a stairway made of ancient stone. Covered in moss, cracked by time, the steps twisted up the side of the cliff like a spine. They didn't welcome her. They waited. Elara placed one foot on the first step. The wind howled, but she climbed, step by step, higher, slower. Her wings dragged behind her. Her hands sometimes clutched the cold rock to keep her balance. She didn't stop, not until the path opened onto a wide, flat ledge that overlooked the world below. She gasped, not because of the height, but because of what she saw. A giant. No, not a giant. A statue. A guardian. Sitting in the center of the mountaintop clearing was a figure carved entirely from stone. At least 3 times her size, with long arms resting on its knees, wings folded against its back, and eyes closed as if dreaming. But its expression was not peaceful. It was broken. Tears, real ones, had once carved lines down its face, now dried and hardened into scars. Vines curled around its shoulders. And in its open palm, resting gently, was a small flower. Alive, still blooming, a single, defiant thing. Elara approached slowly. The air was colder here, and the clouds swirled low, brushing her cheeks. She stood before the statue. Then sat in front of it, cross-legged, and took a deep breath. "You were once like me," she whispered. No answer. But the wind listened. She opened the butterfly cage. A single paper-winged butterfly floated out and landed on the statue's arm. Then she opened her satchel and took out the golden feather. Its light flickered. She laid it on the statue's chest. The stone trembled faintly, and the wind brought her a sound. Not a word, but a sound. A memory. Rain. Not the kind that falls from clouds, but the kind that falls inside hearts. It was the guardian's sorrow. Long ago, this stone figure had been alive. A real light-bearer, a protector of songs and memory. But something had happened, a great silence, a storm of forgetting, and the guardian had tried to hold it back. Tried, and failed. Their heart had turned to stone. Elara closed her eyes and placed both hands on the cold chest of the statue. "You're not forgotten," she said softly. "I am here, I remember." Her hands glowed, not gold, not bright, but soft, like a candle fighting the dark. The flower in the statue's hand stirred. Then a sound, like stone cracking. Gentle, but clear. Elara opened her eyes. A tear fell from the statue's eye. Not stone, real water. And then it spoke. Its voice was low, like a distant storm. "Why have you come?" Elara's eyes filled with tears. "To remember. To bring back what was lost." The guardian opened one eye, clouded with age and sorrow. "You carry the feather," it said. She nodded. "And the light." The guardian slowly, painfully, lifted its head. "It is not enough to carry the light," it said. "You must give it away. Even if it breaks you." Elara touched the golden feather again. "I will," she whispered. The guardian stared at her. "Then listen." And the mountain trembled with memory. Suddenly, the clouds opened. Not with thunder, but with music. Soft, wordless tones fell from the sky like rain. And Elara saw. She saw the world as it once was. Forests alive with songs. Children who danced with stars. Villages that sang stories to the wind. And she saw the beginning of the mist, the forgetting. It started not with darkness, but with silence. With people who stopped telling stories. Stopped listening to the wind. Stopped singing. And that silence grew. It became a shadow. A hunger. A mist. And it consumed all it touched. Even the guardian. Elara wept. Then she stood. "I will carry the songs," she said. "I will speak for those who forgot how." The guardian's body began to crack, not in pain, but in release. Light spilled from the breaks. Wings unfurled. Then, slowly, gently, the the guardian rose. Not fully alive, but not stone anymore. Something in between. Go, it whispered, to the lake of first light. There, you will find the other half of your name. Elara looked up. My name? The guardian nodded. Your story is only half told. Elara touched her chest. She had always felt incomplete. As if something inside her had a beginning, but not an end. She bowed low before the guardian. Thank you. The guardian placed a single glowing stone in her hand. For memory, it said. Then sat back down and closed its eyes. Elara turned toward the trail down the mountain. But before she left, she glanced one last time at the flower still blooming in the guardian's palm. Even in silence, some things refused to die. Even in stone, hope could grow. The mountain behind her stood tall and silent, like a gentle guardian watching over a fragile traveler. Elara moved forward with slow, steady steps. The glowing stone from the guardian warmed her palm, guiding her through the winding trails that sloped back toward the valleys. The air felt different now, not lighter, not heavier, just deeper. Like it was full of secrets waiting to be found. The lantern moth flew slowly in front of her, its glow flickering with purpose. In her satchel, the golden feather rested next to the guardian's stone. The butterflies in the cage stirred softly, responding to something unseen. The wind whispered through the trees. Elara, Lake of First Light, your name. She placed her hand over her chest. What did it mean to only know half your name? Was her name not Elara? Or was Elara just a beginning? She walked in silence for hours. Trees returned, thin at first, then fuller. The mist lingered far behind, slow and distant, but still watching. She could feel its hunger. It didn't like what she was remembering. It wanted her quiet, forgotten. But Elara had chosen another path. By the time she reached the edge of the lake, the sky had turned soft with twilight. A silver-blue glow filled the space around her, casting light on the water like soft glass. The lake was perfectly still. Not a single ripple broke its surface. It looked less like water and more like a mirror stretched across the world. She stood at its edge, barefoot on the cool earth. The lantern moth circled once and then rested on a branch, waiting. Elara stepped forward, and as she did, the lake responded. Light danced across its surface. Not sunlight, not moonlight, but something older. And then, from within the lake, her reflection rose. But it wasn't just her. It was another version of her. She wore the same white dress, the same wings, but her eyes were darker, deeper, like they had seen more. Her hair was longer, her hands steadier. Elara stepped back, but the reflection stepped forward. She heard no words, but she felt them. I am you, if you had never forgotten. Elara stared, her voice caught in her throat. I carry the songs, the memories, the truths you were not ready for. Elara reached toward her. But I've remembered so much already. The reflection nodded. Not enough. A wave of sadness filled the air. To face the mist, to heal the silence, you must carry your whole name. Elara blinked. Then tell me, who am I? The reflection raised one hand and touched Elara's heart. Light pulsed outward. You are Elara, child of the first memory, keeper of the feather of light, the last of the remembers. The words filled her, not like knowledge, but like music returning to a forgotten melody. And then, images. Flash after flash. A forest of golden trees. A woman with wings, singing to the stars. A child, wrapped in light, placed gently inside the roots of an ancient tree. That child was her. She fell to her knees. Tears poured from her eyes. I was left, hidden, protected, she whispered. Because they knew the silence was coming. The reflection nodded. And now you must decide. Step into the lake, and take all of it, all the sorrow, the songs, the loss, the light. Or turn back, and forget again. Elara stood slowly. I will not forget. The water began to glow brighter. She stepped forward, one foot, then another. The lake welcomed her, not with coldness, but with warmth. The water rose around her legs, waist, shoulders, until her entire body was submerged. But she did not drown. She remembered everything, every laugh, every name, every note of every song sung by those who had vanished. And in that moment, her wings changed. They glowed, they expanded, not just fairy wings, but memory wings, woven from light and story. She rose from the water, not flying, but lifted by something greater. The reflection was gone, because it was now inside her. She had become whole, complete, and her name was no longer just Elara. It was Elara Liore, light from the last song. The lake rippled once, then stilled. On the shore, the butterflies inside the cage began to glow bright gold. They fluttered upward, freed. They didn't need the cage anymore. Elara opened it fully and let the rest fly. Her lantern moth returned, circling her like a star coming home. She looked at her hands. They shone. She looked to the sky. And for the first time in many days, it rained, not with water, but with light. Tiny motes of silver and gold fell from the clouds, kissing the leaves, the earth, the lake. It was memory. It was beginning. The mist far away trembled. The silence roared. It had felt her choice. And it was afraid. The morning after the rain of light, the world felt still, like it, too, was holding its breath. The lake of first light shimmered softly behind Elara, glowing even without the sun. Her hair now held streaks of silver light, and her wings sparkled with memory. But her heart knew peace would not last. The mist had felt her awakening. It was growing restless, angry. She began to walk again. This time, the earth beneath her felt different, more alive. The butterflies, now free from the cage, fluttered nearby, following her like floating memories. The lantern moth guided her through tall trees that had once been silent, now humming with a soft tune. As she walked, she sang, not words, but tones. Notes her heart remembered, songs that had no beginning, no end. She had no audience, but the wind carried her song like a message. I am here, I remember, you are not alone. And far away, someone heard her. A boy, hidden in a place where the forest met a field of dying flowers, a boy crouched beneath a tree hollow, his eyes wide and dark. He had dirt on his face, scrapes on his knees, and silence around his heart. But the song reached him, not through his ears, but through the shadows that wrapped around his hands like soft ropes. He didn't run, he didn't speak, he just stood and began walking, toward the sound. Elara didn't see him at first. She was kneeling beside a small brook, cupping water in her hands, whispering thanks to it for still flowing. When she looked up, she saw him standing at the edge of the trees. He didn't move, neither did she. His eyes held something strange, not fear, but something deeper. A quiet ache, a lostness. She stood slowly. Hello, she said softly. He didn't answer, but the shadows at his feet began to swirl, like black smoke in the shape of birds. Elara tilted her head. I see them, she whispered. His eyes widened. Most people didn't see the shadows. Not his, not anyone's, but Elara did. She saw how they clung to him, not evil, not bad, just confused. Like children looking for a place to rest. She took a step forward. The boy stepped back. It's okay, she said. They don't scare me. Still, he said nothing. But the shadows moved. One of them rose and touched her foot like a curious kitten. She knelt down. What's your name? She asked. The boy opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Elara felt it. His voice was trapped. Not stolen like Myra's, but sealed inside something old. Something broken. She stood again, and sang. A soft, slow song. No words, just feelings. The butterflies gathered around her, forming a gentle circle of light. The boy watched, and then the shadows began to hum. They echoed her melody, lower and slower, but true. The boy placed his hands to the ground, and the shadows curled around his arms like ribbons. Then one of them spoke. Not with sound, but with shape, forming letters in the air. Kai, his name. Elara smiled. Kai, she whispered. I'm Elara. He looked at her. Then, for the first time, he smiled. It was small, quiet, but real. He walked closer, one step at a time, and pointed to the golden feather on her shoulder. He placed his hand to his chest, then formed another word in the air. Help. Elara nodded. Yes, that's why I'm here. She reached into her satchel and pulled out the guardian's stone. It glowed faintly, and the shadows moved closer, calmer now. Kai looked confused. He pointed to himself, then formed the word, broken? Elara shook her head. No, she said, you're not broken. You're a rememberer too. His eyes filled with tears. He had never been called anything but strange. Different. Wrong. Now, rememberer. It fit. Elara offered her hand. Kai hesitated, then placed his small, scarred fingers into hers. Their touch created a pulse of light. The shadows around him stopped moving. Some vanished into the trees. Others curled up like they were sleeping. And a small voice came from deep inside him. I can stay with you? Elara looked at him in surprise. He had spoken. Just a whisper, but a true one. She nodded. Yes, stay with me. There's more to remember. More to heal. They walked together. Through forests and fields. The lantern moth flew above them like a floating sun. As they walked, Kai told her stories, not with words, but with shadows. He could shape them like drawings, showing her his past. A home swallowed by mist. Parents who forgot his name. A village that feared him. A song his mother once sang, forgotten. Elara wept. Then she gave him a gift. One of the butterflies landed on his hand and stayed. He held it like a secret. That night, they built a fire near a fallen log. Elara taught Kai to listen. To the wind, the trees, the sleeping earth. And in return, Kai taught her to speak to shadows. Together, they made something new. Light and dark, memory and silence. Not enemies, but friends. And far away, the mist stirred again. It knew now. Elara was not alone. And that made her dangerous. The next morning, the forest was filled with soft echoes. Not sounds, but feelings. A kind of invisible music that wrapped around the trees and kissed the wind. Elara and Kai walked side by side beneath its whispering canopy. Kai's shadows followed quietly behind them, gentle now, like sleeping birds. A single butterfly still sat on his shoulder, glowing with soft pink light. Elara's wings caught the sunlight between the leaves, and the golden feather tucked in her hair pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. She had never felt so steady, so ready, yet a whisper inside her said, "You're not close to the end, just the center." The path twisted and narrowed, leading them to a hollow tree wider than any they had ever seen. Its bark was cracked with time, its roots like bridges above the ground. Elara stopped. "This is it," she said. Kai tilted his head. The shadows shifted. One of them formed a question in the air. "What is this place?" Elara took a breath. "It's called the Forgotten Library," she answered. "The guardian told me it was hidden beneath the oldest tree. Where every story sleeps, even the ones no one remembers anymore." Kai looked up at the branches, so high they disappeared into the clouds. He nodded once. They stepped into the hollow trunk. Inside, the space was round and cool, filled with soft blue light coming from cracks in the bark. At first, it looked empty. But Elara felt it, like holding your breath and hearing your own heartbeat. She placed the guardian's glowing stone against the wall. The tree responded. A low hum rose from the ground. Then the floor split open, not roughly, but like petals unfolding, and a spiral staircase of glowing wood formed beneath their feet. Elara looked at Kai. "Ready?" He nodded. They descended into the roots. The stairs spiraled deep into the earth, and the deeper they went, the quieter the world above became. Soon, even the sound of the wind disappeared. Then the stairs ended, and the library began. The room before them was vast, carved from glowing tree roots that formed walls, shelves, and arches. Floating lights drifted through the air like fireflies, casting a gentle glow. But it was the books that made Elara gasp. Thousands. No, more. Endless rows. Some were paper. Some carved into bark. Some folded from leaves. Some written in starlight. Elara walked forward, eyes wide. Each book whispered softly when she passed, like it remembered her. Kai followed, his shadows brushing gently across the spines. But there was one book, sitting on a pedestal of stone, untouched by time. It had no title on the cover. Only a single mark, the shape of a spiral turning inward. Elara approached. The closer she got, the colder the air became. She placed her hands on the book. It pulsed once beneath her fingers, then opened on its own. And inside, the truth waited. In the beginning, there was light. And where there is light, there must be shadow. But light forgets, and shadow waits. The next pages showed drawings, images Elara could feel more than see. People singing to the stars. Children dancing in moonlight. Villages sharing stories every night so they would never be lost. And then, silence. The forgetting. One person at first, then another. A song unremembered. A name left behind. A promise broken. And from that forgetting, the mist rose. It wasn't just a cloud or curse. It was a being. A presence. A name. Kai's hand brushed the page, and one of his shadows formed a word. Its name is Niver. Elara read the next line aloud. Niver, the great silence, born from every word not spoken, every story left untold. She closed the book softly. The room darkened slightly. Kai looked at her, his eyes serious. Another word formed in the air. Can it be stopped? Elara thought carefully. Not stopped, she said. But remembered. That's how we heal it. Kai looked confused. Stories, she whispered. That's what it's made of. Broken stories. Lost memories. Silence where song once lived. If we tell the stories again, if we remember, and help others remember, it won't win. The book's pages fluttered suddenly and landed on a new image. A map. The heart of silence. The place where Niver lived. A dead valley. A place where not even shadows dared to whisper. The map showed a path, twisting through the mountains, across fields of ash, and into a crater filled with mist. Kai pointed at it. We go? Elara nodded slowly. Yes, but not yet. She turned to the shelves. There are more stories to gather first. They spent the next hours reading, touching books that told of lost villages, quiet heroes, forgotten songs. With every story Elara read aloud, the butterflies returned, not from her cage, but from the shelves themselves. Some were made of paper, others light, but all came alive. They flew around her, then settled gently on the ceiling of the library, glowing like stars. Kai found a book with his name in it. He held it close, and for the first time, he wept. Not in sadness, in knowing he had always been part of the story. When they climbed back to the surface, the wind was waiting. It had missed them. The lantern moth rejoined them at the top of the tree, circling their heads like a crown. Elara looked at the horizon. The mist was closer now. The path to the heart of silence had begun. But this time, she would not walk alone. The wind had changed. It no longer whispered, it trembled. As Elara and Kai stepped beyond the edge of the forest and into the low, gray hills, the trees vanished behind them like a dream fading at dawn. The sky above was stretched with long, silent clouds. The sun tried to shine but was hidden, as if it, too, had forgotten how. Before them lay the Valley of Ash. It was once a field, filled with golden grass and birdsong. But now, only gray. The ground was soft with soot. Black petals scattered like broken wings. Everything felt still, not peaceful, but quiet in a way that pressed against your chest, like an old sadness that never healed. Elara held the golden feather close. Its light was dim now. Tired, Kai walked silently beside her. His shadows didn't play today. They dragged, sluggish and heavy, as if they, too, feared what lay ahead. In the distance, a tall crooked tree stood alone. Beneath it, a figure sat on a bench of stone, unmoving. Elara slowed. Someone's there, she whispered. Kai stopped. His eyes narrowed. One of his shadows shaped a warning. Careful. Elara nodded. They stepped gently across the ash. The closer they got, the clearer the figure became. An old man, dressed in a coat made of rags and feathers. His beard was long and gray. His face was thin, hollow. But his eyes, they were strange. Open, blank, as if looking through everything and seeing nothing. He didn't flinch as they approached. He didn't speak. He didn't breathe, at least, not in the way others did. Elara stood before him. Hello? She asked gently. The man blinked. Then, slowly, turned his head toward her. Have I been waiting long? He asked softly. Kai frowned. You were waiting for someone? Elara asked. The man shrugged. Perhaps, perhaps not. It's hard to know when you don't remember why. Elara sat beside him. Kai stood close, watching carefully. What's your name? Elara asked. The man smiled faintly. I had one. I know I did. But names are slippery here. They fall out of your pockets when you're not looking. Elara reached into her satchel and took out the stone from the guardian. Its glow brightened slightly as she held it near him. The man blinked again. Ah, that light, it stirs something. He placed a hand on his chest. Something deep, but I can't catch it. Elara leaned in. Maybe I can help. She opened her palm and released a paper butterfly. It landed gently on the man's shoulder. Then, she began to hum, a slow, old tune. A lullaby. The man closed his eyes. And something shifted. Tears welled up behind his lashes. I had a daughter, he whispered. Didn't I? Elara nodded gently. I think so. The man swallowed hard. She had hair like fire. A voice that danced. She used to sit right here and tell me stories. Kai's shadows curled around him now, not in fear, but in protection. The man looked down. I remember her laughter. I remember her favorite flower, moonlace. But her name. He gripped his head. Why can't I remember her name? Elara took his hand. Because the mist took it, she said softly. But it didn't take your love. The man trembled. Then he pointed toward the hills. There's a box, he whispered. Buried under that tree. I don't know what's in it, but I buried it when the forgetting came. I knew I had to hide something. Elara stood. Kai followed her. They found the tree. A bent, tired thing with one leaf still clinging to a brittle branch. Together, they dug, and found a small wooden box. Inside was a single object. A locket. Elara opened it. Inside was a pressed flower, moonlace. And behind it, a note. The ink was faded, but readable. To my papa. When I grow wings, I'll fly to the stars and tell them your stories. Love, Leora. Elara gasped. She turned to the man. Your daughter's name is Leora. The man's body froze. Then, like breath returning after drowning, he gasped. The mist around the valley shuddered. I remember, he cried. Leora, and his voice echoed. Not just across the valley, but inside it. The ash trembled. The silence cracked, and the valley wept. From the ground, small flowers began to rise. Moonlace, hundreds of them, soft blue petals in a field of gray. Elara returned to him and placed the locket in his hands. He held it like a newborn. I thought she was lost. She's not, Elara whispered. You remembered her. That's all she ever wanted. He looked at her with clear eyes now. You carry something, he said softly. More than the feather. You carry the songs of the world. Kai sat beside him. The man turned to him. You too, shadow boy. You carry the silence. But you bend it. You listen. Kai gave a tiny nod. The man placed the locket over his heart. And smiled. I think I can stay here now, he said. Tend the flowers. Guard this memory. Make sure no one forgets her again. Elara stood. Thank you, she said. No, he whispered. Thank you, for bringing her name back to me. As they left the valley, the wind carried a new sound behind them. A name spoken aloud. Over and over. Leora, 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 and the mist, watching from beyond the hills, began to tremble. Because names are powerful, and memory is stronger than silence. The days grew shorter, or maybe time was simply bending. Elara didn't know. What she did know was this. The mist was no longer behind them. It was ahead. Thick clouds rolled across the sky without shape, erasing the horizon. Even the air changed, heavier, quieter, and thick with memory that didn't quite belong to anyone. Birds stopped flying. Trees grew twisted and leaned away from the path. The butterflies that had once followed Elara now circled high above, uncertain. Only Kai's shadows still moved freely, whispering warnings in his ears. The guardian's stone had stopped glowing. The lantern moth still lit the way, but even it fluttered closer to her shoulder now, clinging for warmth. They were close. Elara could feel it. The heart of silence was near. She and Kai stopped one evening at a place where no sounds dared to settle. Even the fire they made gave no crackle. The stars above were dim, veiled in pale mist. Kai couldn't sleep. Neither could Elara. Instead, they talked, quietly, honestly. I'm afraid, Elara admitted, looking into the flickering orange light. Kai nodded, shadows curling gently around him. He formed the word. Me too. Elara smiled faintly. We've come so far. Kai's fingers moved through the dirt, drawing symbols, stars, feathers, wings. Then a new shape. A circle with light inside. You. Elara blinked. Me? He nodded. Then shaped another image. Light in darkness. Tears rose in her eyes. Then let's keep walking. By sunrise, they reached it. The edge of the unspoken. A cliff. Beyond it, nothing. A crater so wide, the other side could not be seen. It was filled with mist that spun in slow, heavy spirals. There was no ground, no path, just gray, but at the center, something pulsed. Like a heartbeat, like a breath being held. The heart of silence. Niver. It was not a creature of claws or teeth. It had no face. It had no voice. But it was there, watching, waiting. Elara stood at the cliff's edge. Her golden feather dimmed in her hand. Her wings fluttered behind her like tired memories. Kai came up beside her. One shadow lifted and pointed into the mist. It's afraid of you. Elara frowned. Why? Kai shaped the answer carefully. Because you remember. She closed her eyes. And for a moment, everything came back. Myra's voice. The guardian's tears. Kai's first word. Leora's name. The library. The songs. The sorrow. And the truth. Niver didn't feed on evil. It fed on emptiness. On silence. On stories not told. And now it was bloated with them. Elara stepped forward. But the mist pushed back. Hard. Wind howled. The earth shook. Her heart raced. But she didn't move. She held the golden feather to her chest. Then looked at Kai. I need you with me. He nodded. She held out her hand. He took it. Together, they stepped into the mist. At first, there was only gray. Then the gray became soundless. A place where thoughts disappeared before becoming words. Where names slipped from memory. Where heartbeats echoed too loudly. Kai stumbled. Elara held tighter. The mist whispered lies into their minds. You are forgotten. No one remembers your name. You were never real. Your stories don't matter. Elara fell to one knee. But something inside her stirred. A song. The first one. The one her mother, whoever she had been, had once sung. She began to hum. Soft. Barely audible. But real. Kai heard it. He added his own note. A tone only shadows could shape. Together, they created a thread of memory. And it cut through the mist. They kept walking. And then, they saw it. The center. The heart of silence. Not a thing. Not a being. But a space. A wound. Like a hole in the world where everything had been erased. Floating within it. Pages. Millions of them. Blank. Unwritten. Untold. And hovering at the very center. A book. Massive. Closed. Elara stepped forward. The mist screamed. Without sound. But she sang. A lullaby of all she had gathered. Kai shaped names into the air. Mira, Leora, the Guardian, Elara, Kai, even Niver. And as each name was spoken, a page filled in, a word appeared, a light ignited, the book at the center opened. And Niver, the great silence, wept. Not tears, but songs, long lost ones. The mist began to collapse, falling inward. Returning, not into darkness, but into story. Elara stood at the heart, tears streaking her face. She touched the open book. A voice, ancient, warm, spoke from within. You remembered. You made them remember. You finished the song. She looked at Kai. He nodded. The mist cleared. And for the first time in ages, the sky returned. The silence was gone. Not the soft silence of peace, but the heavy silence of forgetting. It had melted. Not in flames. Not in battle. But in song. In story. In truth. Elara stood at the center of the place where Niver had once been. The massive book, the one that held all the unwritten memories, now lay open and breathing beneath her feet. Its pages fluttered in the wind, filling themselves with every name, every song, every moment that had ever been lost. And above, the sky was open. It glowed with soft golden light, pierced by stars that had not been seen in 1,000 years. Kai stood beside her. His shadows now rested on his shoulders like a cape. They no longer pulled him down, they held him up. He looked taller somehow, stronger, but his eyes still held the same quiet wonder as the boy who had once spoken with silence. They had done it, the forgetting was broken, but now came a different kind of silence. The one that asks, what now? They returned first to the Valley of Ash. But it wasn't ash anymore. The moon lace had spread, blue blossoms dancing in the wind like lanterns of the earth. The man who had forgotten Leora now sat beneath the tree with a circle of children, telling stories they had never heard before. When he saw Elara and Kai, he didn't speak. He simply placed his hand over his heart. He remembered. They walked on. Mira greeted them in the village where she had once lived in quiet. Her voice now carried through the sky like a bell. She hugged Elara so tightly it felt like the wind might split open. You reminded me I am more than my silence, Mira whispered. You reminded me, Elara replied, that silence can become song. The guardian, still part stone but more alive now, waited on the mountain ledge. He looked at Elara with a gaze full of old sorrow and new hope. You carried the light, he said. Even when it dimmed, you lit it first, she replied. I only protected it, and the guardian placed one hand on her shoulder. Elara Liore, he said softly, you are now the keeper of the remembering. The sky had begun to change too. Where once clouds were thick with fog, they now danced with color. Golden trails stretched across the air like brushstrokes of memory. The butterflies, thousands of them, carried stories from village to village. Some glowed with songs, others with names. All were welcome now, but Elara, she felt something stirring deeper. A tugging in her chest. Not of pain, of calling. One night, beneath the stars, she stood at the top of a quiet hill. Kai stood beside her. I feel it, she said. Kai shaped a question in the air. Leave? She nodded. There's a place, beyond here. Beyond even memory. A place where new stories are born before anyone speaks them. Kai looked down. A shadow flickered. Then he touched her hand. I'll stay. Tears welled in Elara's eyes. Will you help others remember? He nodded. Always. She leaned forward and touched her forehead to his. You are more than shadow, Kai. You are light in a quieter form. He smiled. Then from the stars above, light descended. Not lightning, not fire, but soft gold, shaped like wings and feathers and wind. It circled her, lifted her. Elara didn't resist. She rose slowly, gracefully, carried by the memories she had returned to the world. As she rose, her golden feather shimmered so brightly it became a trail across the sky. Children from every village pointed upward. Mama, look. Papa, it's her. The feather girl. The lightkeeper. And somewhere, a child picked up a paper butterfly and whispered, Elara Liore. She didn't disappear. Not truly. Some say she became a star. Some say she became the breeze that carries forgotten names to sleeping ears. Some say that if you stand very still, with your heart wide open, you can hear her song in the rustling of leaves. Kai, now grown, became a great storyteller. He sat under the moonlace tree and told children about the day silence broke. He always ended the story the same way. She didn't defeat the silence with a sword, she defeated it by listening. By remembering. By loving. And the children would ask, wide-eyed, will she ever come back? And Kai would smile and say, she never left. Every time you tell a story, she's here. The sky remembers. The wind remembers. And now, so do we. Thank you for watching the video all the way through. If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.